In the shadowed confines of Greenfield Correctional Facility, an inmate named Miguel Ramirez made an unusual request: an image of the Virgin Mary to accompany him into solitary confinement. The guards scoffed, dismissing it as a quaint plea from a desperate man. Yet, 7 days later, when they opened the cell door, they found themselves confronted by something they could not easily dismiss: a profound testament to the mysterious and miraculous power of faith. This story is an invitation to believe in miracles that blossom in the most unlikely places. Comment below if you believe in miracles, even in the most unlikely places. Subscribe and hit the bell to follow stories that inspire hope. Share this story with someone who needs encouragement today. Miguel Ramirez was once a man whose stride carried the confidence of a life still full of potential. However, the relentless passage of years within the unforgiving walls of Greenfield had worn down his spirit. At 40, with hair streaked with the silver of hardship and eyes that bore witness to more sorrow than joy, Miguel had spent nearly a decade in prison for a crime he steadfastly claimed he did not commit. His world had narrowed to the predictable cycles of prison life, his vibrant spirit smothered by the weight of unanswered prayers. Each day unfolded with an unchanging rhythm: waking at 6 o'clock, breakfast at 6:30, laboring under the sun at 9 o'clock, a meager lunch at noon, more work at 2 o'clock, a meager dinner at 5 o'clock, cell lockdown at 7 o'clock, and lights out at 10 o'clock. This monotonous routine was all that Miguel knew, and it seemed that nothing would ever disrupt its wearying cycle. Experience will begin to unfold, guided by faith and the quiet strength of the Virgin Mary's image. As the heavy door of solitary confinement clanged shut behind Miguel, the sound reverberated through the small, dimly lit cell, echoing the finality of his isolation. The air was thick with the scent of concrete and stale regret, a fitting backdrop for the introspection that was about to unfold. Miguel stood still for a moment, adjusting to the oppressive silence that seemed to press against him from all sides. Clutched tightly in his hand was the small image of the Virgin Mary, its edges worn from years of hopeful handling. He sat down on the cold, unforgiving bench, his back against the wall, and gazed at the picture. The Virgin's serene eyes seemed to meet his, offering a sense of peace that Miguel found both comforting and unsettling. It had been years since he had truly looked to his faith for solace. Life's hardships had whittled away at his once fervent beliefs, leaving behind a shell of skepticism and doubt. Yet, here in this desolate space, with nothing but the image to accompany him, Miguel felt the stirrings of something long forgotten hope. His mind traveled back to his childhood in a small village, where faith was as much a part of life as the sun rising each morning. He remembered his mother's gentle voice reciting the rosary and the warmth of the church's wooden pews. The village priest, Father Anselmo, with his kind eyes and endless patience, had been a guiding light during those formative years. "Faith, Miguelito, is like a seed," Father Anselmo had once told him. "It needs nurturing to grow, but even when neglected, it can find a way to flourish again." Miguel closed his eyes, the memory of those words lingering in his mind. He had not thought of Father Anselmo in years, yet here, in this barren cell, his childhood mentor's wisdom surged forward, begging to be acknowledged. The guard's mocking laughter echoed faintly in his memory, yet it felt distant now, inconsequential in the face of the quiet strength that the picture seemed to impart. He thought of Thomas, the inmate who had given him the image without hesitation. Thomas, whose faith was unwavering despite the oppressive environment of the prison. Miguel had often seen him praying in the yard, his lips moving silently, a testament to a devotion that transcended their grim reality. There was something about Thomas's faith that had always intrigued Miguel, an unshakable certainty that seemed to grant him a peace Miguel had long since abandoned. As he sat there, surrounded by silence, Miguel felt a gradual shift within himself. It was as if the Virgin Mary's serene gaze was urging him to face the doubts and fears that he had buried deep within. He began to speak softly, almost as if in prayer, though he was unsure if anyone, divine or otherwise, was listening. "Mother Mary," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "I don't know if I still believe, but I want to. Help me find my way back." The admission hung in the air, a fragile thread connecting him to something greater, something beyond the confines of his cell. As the hours stretched on, Miguel found himself reflecting on the choices that had led him here, the moments of weakness, and the fleeting glimpses of strength. He pondered the nature of faith, not as a rigid doctrine, but as a living, breathing presence capable of guiding him through the darkness. In this solitude, Miguel began to understand that faith was not about certainty but about the willingness to seek, to question, and to ultimately embrace the mystery. It was a living journey, marked by doubt and renewal, much like the path he was now embarking on. As the dim light of the cell turned to shadow, Miguel felt a sense of calm wash over him. Though the road ahead was uncertain, and the weight of his past still bore heavily upon him, there was a newfound resolve within him, a quiet determination to nurture the seed that Father Anselmo had planted all those years ago. He looked once more at the image of the Virgin Mary, her expression gentle and understanding. In her eyes Miguel saw not judgment, but an invitation to trust, to hope, and to believe in the possibility of redemption. The clang of the cell door opening startled Miguel from his reverie, signaling the end of his solitary confinement. As he stood to leave, he carefully tucked the image of the Virgin Mary into his pocket, a new sense of purpose guiding his steps. The journey of transformation had begun, and with faith as his compass, Miguel was ready to face whatever lay ahead. With his heart slightly lighter, Miguel stepped out of the cell, feeling the weight of the past begin to lift, however slowly. There was a world waiting beyond the walls of his confinement, and though the path was uncertain, he was no longer alone. Guided by the quiet strength of the Virgin Mary and the memories of a faith once strong, Miguel took a deep breath and walked forward into the light of a new day. The metal door clanged shut behind Miguel, leaving him standing in the dim corridor of the prison, a place that had become both his crucible and his chrysalis. As he walked, the echoes of his footsteps seemed to whisper tales of countless souls who had traversed these same paths, each seeking their own absolution. The corridors stretched long and shadowed, yet Miguel felt an unfamiliar lightness in his step, a quiet assurance that perhaps he was not entirely alone on this journey. 3 days had passed since his release from solitary confinement, a period marked by introspection and a confrontation with the ghosts of his past. The cell had been silent, save for the rhythmic beat of his heart and the occasional distant sound of life beyond the walls. Yet, on the 3rd day, something changed. As if heralding a new beginning, the scent of roses permeated the air, inexplicably filling the small space with a fragrance so divine that it immediately drew Miguel into a state of reverent wonder. The scent had enveloped him like a benediction, awakening memories long buried beneath layers of regret and guilt. It was the scent of his childhood, a scent he associated with the small chapel in his village, where he had attended Mass with his abuela. He recalled how, as a young boy, he would sit beside her, entranced by the stories of saints and miracles, tales of faith that seemed both distant and yet so intimately woven into the tapestry of his life. Miguel closed his eyes, allowing the fragrance to transport him back to those simpler times when faith had been as natural as breathing. He remembered the image of the Virgin Mary, adorned with roses, standing serenely at the altar, her gaze tender and all-seeing. It was this image that had mysteriously appeared in his cell, a small card left behind by a previous inmate, perhaps, or somehow brought to him by a force unseen. Whatever its origin, it had become a lifeline, a tangible reminder of hope and redemption. Now, as he walked through the prison corridors, the image of the Virgin Mary pressed close to his heart. Miguel felt the gentle stirrings of transformation within. The scent of roses had been a sign, a symbol of grace, and a call to reflect on the choices that had led him here. It invited him to seek forgiveness, not only from those he had wronged but also from himself. In the communal area, Miguel found a corner to sit, the noise of the other inmates fading into the background as he withdrew into his thoughts. The past 3 days had been a journey inward, an exploration of the tangled web of decisions that had shaped his life. He thought of his family, the broken promises, and the paths not taken. Each memory was a thread that bound him to his past, yet each was also a potential thread of redemption, waiting to be woven into a new narrative. His reverie was interrupted by a voice, gentle yet firm. "Mind if I sit?" It was Father Carlos, the prison chaplain, a man whose presence was both a comfort and a challenge to those he served. Miguel nodded, grateful for the company. Father Carlos settled into the seat opposite him, his eyes kind yet penetrating. "You've been through a lot these past few days," the priest observed, his voice a balm to Miguel's troubled soul. Miguel met his gaze, the weight of unspoken confessions heavy on his lips. "It's strange," he began, hesitantly. "In solitary, I felt something. A scent like roses. It reminded me of my abuela and the church back home." Father Carlos smiled, a knowing glint in his eye. "The scent of roses is often associated with the presence of the divine," he said softly. "Perhaps it's a sign that you're not as alone as you think." The words resonated with Miguel, stirring something deep within. "I want to believe that," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "I want to believe there's a way back, a way to make things right. Faith is a journey," Father Carlos replied, "and each step you take is a step toward redemption. It's never easy, but you're not walking it alone." The chaplain's words hung in the air like a sacred promise, a reminder that the path to redemption was not a solitary endeavor. As they sat in silence, Miguel found comfort in the priest's presence, the quiet strength of his faith a beacon in the darkness. In the days that followed, Miguel continued to grapple with his emotions, each moment an opportunity to confront the shadows of his past. The image of the Virgin Mary became his constant companion, her serene gaze a reminder of the grace he sought. He began to see signs and symbols everywhere in the kindness of a fellow inmate, in the gentle rustle of leaves outside the barred window, in the simple act of breaking bread with others. With each passing day, the scent of roses lingered in his mind, a symbol of the miraculous changes that lay ahead. Though the path was fraught with uncertainty, Miguel felt a quiet determination guiding him forward. The journey of transformation had begun, and with faith as his compass, he was ready to face whatever lay ahead. As he lay in his bunk at night, Miguel would stare at the ceiling, feeling the weight of his past slowly lift. There was a world waiting beyond the walls of his confinement, and though the path was uncertain, he was no longer alone. Guided by the quiet strength of the Virgin Mary and the memories of a faith once strong, Miguel took a deep breath and walked forward into the light of a new day. As the first light of dawn seeped through the narrow cracks in the prison walls, Miguel's eyelids fluttered, the remnants of a dream still lingering like a gentle whisper in his mind. He lay still, cradled by an inexplicable sense of peace, as if the very air around him had been transformed into something holy and precious. The dream had been unlike any other, a vivid tapestry of colors and emotions, woven with threads of hope and divine love. In the dream, Miguel found himself standing in an ethereal landscape, a place where the sky kissed the earth in a seamless embrace. The air was fragrant with the scent of lilies, their white petals glowing softly in the gentle light. The world around him was bathed in hues of twilight, a serene realm suspended between night and day. It was a place where time seemed to pause, allowing the heart to breathe and the soul to dance freely. As he stood there, absorbing the beauty that surrounded him, a figure appeared in the distance. She moved with the grace of a gentle breeze, her flowing blue gown shimmering like the sea at dawn. The woman approached with an aura of compassion and understanding, her eyes holding the depth of 1,000 stories untold. There was something infinitely familiar about her presence, as if Miguel had known her all his life. When she spoke, her voice was a melody of kindness and truth, resonating within him like a bell tolling in a quiet chapel. "The truth will set you free," she whispered, her words echoing with the power of an ancient promise. In that moment, Miguel felt the chains of despair that bound his heart begin to melt away, replaced by a warmth he had long forgotten. The woman extended her hand, and as Miguel reached out to grasp it, he felt a surge of emotions rushing through him. It was as if her touch had unlocked a floodgate, releasing years of pent-up pain and sorrow. Tears began to fall, gentle and cleansing, each drop a testament to the healing power of grace. It was the first time in years that he had allowed himself to weep, and the release was both painful and liberating. The dream began to fade, the woman's image dissolving into a mist of light. Yet her words lingered, a beacon of hope in the depths of his soul. Miguel awoke to find himself back in his cell, the cold stone walls a stark contrast to the warmth of the dream. But something had shifted within him. He was no longer the man bound by bitterness and regret. He was a man reborn, guided by a newfound faith that promised redemption. For the first time, Miguel sat up on his bunk and let himself cry freely. Each tear carried away fragments of the past, washing over him like a baptismal tide. He felt the presence of the Virgin Mary, her gentle strength wrapping around him like a mantle, urging him to embrace this new beginning. As the morning light grew brighter, Miguel rose from his bed, his heart lighter than it had been in years. He moved to the small window, looking out at the world beyond. The sky was painted with the colors of dawn, a symphony of pinks and golds that spoke of hope and renewal. He breathed deeply, filling his lungs with the crisp morning air, and whispered a prayer of gratitude. The dream had marked the climax of his spiritual journey, a pivotal moment where faith began to supplant his despair. It was a turning point, urging him toward a new perspective on his life and circumstances. Miguel understood now that the path to freedom lay not in escaping the physical confines of his cell, but in embracing the truth that had been revealed to him. In the days that followed, Miguel found himself drawn to the simple beauty of everyday moments. He reveled in the quiet companionship of his fellow inmates, finding solace in their shared humanity. He discovered the joy of offering a kind word, of listening with empathy and understanding. Each small act became a prayer, a way to honor the grace he had been given. Miguel began to seek out the prison chaplain, a gentle man with a heart full of compassion. Together they would sit in the prison chapel, the flickering candles casting shadows that danced like angels on the walls. The chaplain would read from the scriptures, his voice a balm to Miguel's soul, and they would talk about the mysteries of faith and the promise of redemption. One afternoon, as they sat together in the quiet of the chapel, the chaplain turned to Miguel with a thoughtful expression. "You've come a long way, my friend," he said gently. "I can see the light in your eyes, the hope that has been rekindled. Remember, the journey of faith is not always easy, but it is the path to true freedom." Miguel nodded, feeling the truth of the chaplain's words resonate within him. "I know now that I'm not alone," he replied, his voice steady with conviction. "I have faith to guide me, and a hope that will never die." As Miguel continued to walk this path, he found himself opening to the beauty of life's imperfections, learning to forgive others and, most importantly, himself. The journey was ongoing, a tapestry still being woven, but with each step, he felt the presence of the divine guiding him toward a future filled with promise. The dream of hope had become a reality, a testament to the power of faith and the enduring grace of God. Miguel knew that the truth had indeed set him free, not from his physical confines, but from the chains that had bound his heart. And with that freedom came the courage to embrace whatever lay ahead, knowing that he was held in the loving embrace of a higher power. Thus, with renewed strength and a heart full of hope, Miguel took a deep breath and stepped forward into the light of a new day, ready to face the world with faith as his compass and love as his guide. As the echo of the heavy doors sliding shut behind him filled the small, dimly lit cell, Miguel took a deep breath, inhaling the air that seemed to carry with it a new softness. His time in solitary confinement, a period of introspection and prayer, had come to an end, but the lessons learned within those four walls would stay with him forever. The silence that once felt oppressive had become a sanctuary, a sacred space where he had encountered the divine presence in the most unexpected of ways. Now, as he stepped out, he felt a profound peace enveloping him, a peace that transcended understanding. The guards, accustomed to releasing inmates who were either sullen or defiant, were taken aback by the calm demeanor that Miguel exuded. There was something else, too, an unexplainable fragrance that filled the air, like the scent of roses in full bloom. They exchanged puzzled glances, unsure of how to react to this unexpected phenomenon. Yet Miguel, with a gentle smile, simply nodded to them, acknowledging their presence not as captors but as fellow souls on a shared journey. As he made his way back to the general population, a renewed spirit seemed to animate his every step. The clang of bars and the murmur of voices filled the air, but Miguel moved through it all with an inner light that drew the attention of those around him. Some inmates watched him with curiosity, others with disbelief, but Miguel's transformation was undeniable. It was as if the chains that had once bound his heart had been replaced by wings, lifting him above the burdens of his past. In the common area, Miguel found Thomas waiting for him. The older man's eyes were filled with a mixture of relief and wonder. "Miguel!" he exclaimed, his voice a blend of joy and incredulity. "You're back. And you look different. What happened in there?" Miguel chuckled softly, the sound like a gentle breeze rustling through leaves. "I found something, Thomas. Or rather, someone found me. In the silence, I heard the whisper of God's love, and it changed everything." Thomas nodded, understanding the unspoken depths of Miguel's words. "I knew there was something special about you," he said, reaching into his pocket. "Here, I want you to have this." He pressed the small, worn image of the Virgin Mary into Miguel's hand. "She's been with me through the darkest times. I think she'll do the same for you." Miguel looked at the image, his heart swelling with gratitude. "Thank you, Thomas. I'll cherish it." With the image safely tucked into his pocket, Miguel began to spend his days offering encouragement and support to the other inmates. He listened to their stories, shared in their struggles, and gently guided them toward hope, much like a shepherd leading his flock toward greener pastures. His presence became a beacon of light in the dim corridors, a testament to the power of faith and the possibility of redemption. One afternoon, as the sun cast golden rays through the barred windows, Miguel found himself sitting with a group of younger inmates. They were drawn to him, curious about the man who seemed to embody a peace they had long forgotten. "Tell us, Miguel," one of them asked. "How did you change?" Miguel paused, choosing his words carefully. "It wasn't easy," he admitted. "I had to face the darkest parts of myself, the things I'd been running from for years. But in that darkness, I found light. I found forgiveness not just from God, but for myself. And that changed everything." The young men listened intently, their eyes reflecting a mixture of skepticism and hope. Miguel continued, "Life isn't perfect. We all make mistakes. But we're not defined by them. We're defined by how we rise after we fall, how we choose to love and forgive, and how we let God's grace transform us." As the days turned into weeks, Miguel's influence began to ripple through the prison. Some inmates started attending the chapel services, while others sought out Miguel for guidance and prayer. The guards, too, noticed the shift in atmosphere, a subtle yet undeniable change that spoke of a larger miracle unfolding within the walls. One evening, as Miguel sat in his cell, the image of the Virgin Mary in his hand, he felt a deep sense of gratitude wash over him. He had been given a second chance, an opportunity to be a vessel of God's love and mercy. And though he was still a prisoner in the eyes of the world, his spirit soared free, unshackled by the past. The journey of transformation that had begun in the solitude of his cell was now bearing fruit, touching the lives of those around him in ways he could never have imagined. And as he prepared to close his eyes for the night, he whispered a prayer of thanks, knowing that he was held in the loving embrace of a higher power. With faith as his compass and love as his guide, Miguel was ready for whatever lay ahead, trusting that the tapestry of his life was being woven with threads of grace and redemption. And though the path was still unfolding, he knew that he would never walk it alone. The presence of the divine, like the scent of roses, lingered with him, a constant reminder of the miracle of new beginnings. The morning sun gently kissed the walls of Miguel's cell, casting a warm glow that seemed to echo the lightness in his heart. The days had turned into weeks since Miguel had first embraced the miracle of his transformation, and his newfound faith had not gone unnoticed. The prison chaplain, Father Raphael, had become a regular visitor, drawn to Miguel's unwavering spirit and the quiet wisdom that seemed to emanate from him. One day, as Father Raphael sat with Miguel in the modest confines of his cell, he spoke with a sense of urgency wrapped in hope. "Miguel," he began, "there's someone I want you to meet. A lawyer. Her name is Sophia. She's heard of your story and is compelled by what she has learned. She believes there may be new evidence that could help your case." Miguel's heart skipped a beat. He had long surrendered his fate to the divine, trusting in the mysterious ways of God's providence. The idea of freedom was a distant dream he rarely entertained, yet here it was, presenting itself as a possibility. "Father, do you think—" Miguel's voice trailed off, his eyes searching Father Raphael's for reassurance. "Have faith, Miguel," the chaplain replied softly. "The Lord works in mysterious ways, and sometimes He sends angels in the form of those who seek justice." Days later, Miguel found himself seated across from Sofia in a small, nondescript room reserved for legal consultations. Her presence was both commanding and compassionate, her eyes reflecting a relentless pursuit of truth. "Miguel," she began, her voice steady yet filled with empathy, "I've reviewed your case, and there are discrepancies that cannot be ignored. I've spoken to witnesses who were never called to testify, and I've found records that suggest evidence was overlooked." Miguel listened intently, his heart a mixture of hope and disbelief. "Sofia, I have prayed for guidance and strength. If what you say is true, then perhaps this is God's answer." Sofia smiled, a warmth radiating from her. "I believe it is. We will fight this, Miguel. Together." The ensuing weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Sofia worked tirelessly, her determination a force of its own. She pored over documents, re-interviewed witnesses, and brought the case back into the light. All the while, Miguel remained steadfast in his faith, spending his evenings in prayer and reflection, his soul anchored by the hope of redemption. Finally, the day arrived. The courtroom was filled with a tense anticipation as Sofia presented her findings with eloquence and precision. Piece by piece, she dismantled the flawed narrative that had led to Miguel's incarceration. Her arguments were compelling, her evidence irrefutable. As the judge delivered the verdict, Miguel's heart pounded in his chest. "In light of the new evidence," the judge declared, "this court finds Miguel Sanchez not guilty of the charges brought against him." A collective gasp echoed through the room, followed by a wave of emotion. Miguel's family, seated in the gallery, erupted in tears of joy and relief, their prayers finally answered. Miguel himself was momentarily speechless, his heart overflowing with gratitude. Outside the courthouse, Miguel stood blinking in the sunlight, free for the first time in years. His family surrounded him, their embraces a balm for the wounds of the past. In that moment, Miguel knew that his life had been spared for a purpose greater than himself. As days turned into weeks, Miguel began to carve out his new path. Inspired by the grace that had carried him through his darkest hours, he dedicated himself to advocating for others who had been wrongfully accused. He traveled to prisons, sharing his story of hope and redemption, his words a beacon for those still trapped in despair. Miguel's journey was not without its challenges, but he faced them with the same quiet strength and faith that had seen him through his own trials. He often found solace in prayer, seeking guidance from the Virgin Mary, whose presence he had felt so keenly during his time of need. One evening, as Miguel knelt before a humble altar adorned with candles and flowers, he spoke softly to the Blessed Mother. "Thank you, Holy Mother, for your intercession and for carrying me through the storm. I am but a humble servant, and I dedicate my life to doing your Son's will." In the quiet of the church, Miguel felt a peace that surpassed understanding, a gentle reminder that he was never alone. The Virgin's presence was a constant, a fragrant whisper of roses that lingered in the air, a testament to the miracles that faith can unfold. Miguel's story became one of inspiration and hope, a testament to the power of faith and the possibility of miracles. His name was spoken with reverence in the communities he touched, his message one of enduring love and redemption. And as the sun set on another day, Miguel knew that the tapestry of his life was still being woven, each thread a mark of grace and divine purpose. He walked forward with a heart full of gratitude, guided by the light of faith and the promise of new beginnings. In this journey of transformation, Miguel had discovered the true miracle, the miracle of a life renewed by faith, the miracle of redemption that came not from the world but from the divine embrace of the Holy Spirit. And so, Miguel continued to walk his path, hand in hand with the sacred, ever mindful of the miracles that unfold when faith and love lead the way. Do not forget to write 7 days in the comments if Joey's story moved your heart. Subscribe to the channel and activate the bell to never miss inspiring true stories. Share this video with someone who needs to believe that miracles still happen.